Good evening, drifters and daydreamers. Before we dim the lights, tell me, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments. Let's turn this little corner of the internet into a glowing map of midnight travellers. The last heat of the week slips off the pavement like a sigh. You idle at the entrance with the windows cranked down, wrists resting on the steering wheel, the radio whispering something easy and familiar. Ahead, the ticket booth glows like a tiny lighthouse, a square of warm yellow in the violet hour. A paper sign taped to the glass lists tonight's double feature. The numbers hand-lettered, with the quiet confidence of a place that knows you're staying a while. You hand over a few crumpled bills, and the attendant tears the stub with the reverence of a small ceremony. One you've rehearsed a dozen Fridays and will rehearse a dozen more. Gravel road inside crunches beneath the tyres, each pop of stone a metronome counting down to night. To your left and right sprout the crooked metal speaker poles, little silver trees planted decades ago, some still bearing their heavy cast-iron fruit. A few cars pull up to them out of habit, hanging the grey boxes on their windows like a talisman for good luck. Most of the lot, though, leans into the future, dashboards glowing softly as people tune through static to the posted frequency, hunting for the clean ribbon of sound the projection booth will feed to the sky later on. For now, there's just a hiss, and beneath it the faint faraway crickets, a sound that seems to be stitched into the ground itself. Finding your spot is part science, part superstition. You ease into a lane and nudge forward until the hood lines up with that sweet, gentle slope pointing your windshield toward the giant white rectangle at the field's far end. Someone in an old station wagon waves you around. Someone in a pickup eases back 2 feet to give you a better angle. There's choreography here, a kindness learned across 1,000 informal lessons, as if the lot remembers all the times families did this before you. When you kill the engine, the silence blooms, then reshapes itself into the low hum of conversation and the soft click of doors and the airy tear of blankets being unfurled. The screen is a pale ghost while it waits, taller than the trees behind it, catching the last streaks of sunset like a sail. As twilight thickens, the first moths arrive, looping in lazy figure eights around the neon snack bar sign. The S flickers as though it's clearing its throat, then holds steady. Between the lanes, a girl in pyjamas hops from paver to paver like she's crossing a river of lava. Her father drags a cooler with the purposeful slowness of a person who refuses to be rushed. A pair of teenagers walk toward the back fence and pretend they're not trying to look at each other. A mother carries popcorn in both hands and a paper tray balanced on her forearm, navigating the narrow channels between bumpers like a boat through reeds. You pull the blanket from the back seat and lay it across your knees, an old habit even on warm nights, because one corner of the evening always turns cool. The fabric smells like detergent and last summer. A breeze moves across the field and the flags near the ticket booth flutter in a high, soft clatter. Somewhere close, a soda hisses open. The air is an intricate perfume, butter and dust, hot dogs and cut grass, vinyl seats gently releasing the day's heat. If a smell could be a memory, this would be the one that sticks to the ribs. A staffer in a retro jacket strolls down the aisle with a flashlight like a wand, pointing folks forward a little, back a little, angling headlights toward the ground as they settle. When the beam crosses your hands on the steering wheel, it paints them briefly in theatre light, and you catch yourself smiling. Behind the screen, the horizon holds on to the last rind of colour. The first star shows up stubborn and bright, then another. The Big Dipper tips slowly toward the roofline of an old sedan, and you notice that as the sky deepens, the cars turn into silhouettes, each one a small house with its own private living room, each windshield a window into someone's evening. You flip through the dial until you find the right frequency. 1 click past a ball game, 2 clicks past a preacher, and there it is, a steady tone, then a loop of warm-up music that sounds like it's been dipped in honey. The radio fills the cabin with a soft, room-like sound, like the car is growing walls of velvet and a ceiling of stars. You rest your elbow on the window ledge and let the cool edge of the glass anchor you. Now and then a headlight arcs across the field and you watch the shadows of people swing like pendulums against their cars. On a distant country road, a motorcycle passes and dissolves into crickets. From the snack bar, a bell chimes as the door opens and closes, and with each swing you catch a glimpse of a little neon paradise inside. Chrome, a row of syrup pumps, a menu board listing nachos and funnel cakes, and something proudly called the Comet. The popcorn machine breathes butter-coloured weather behind its glass, and the paper bags puff outward as they're filled, like they're surprised at their good fortune. A child clutches a licorice rope that trails red across the night like a small comet tail of his own. Two old friends stand at the edge of the light and laugh at something they've laughed at for years. A teenage usher leans on a broom with the same posture every teenager with a broom has ever had. Gradually the field becomes a village. Dogs are introduced to other dogs with ceremonial sniffing. Someone in the third row unrolls a yoga mat like a stage for lounging. Window screens pop open and fold shut. A choreography of arms passing napkins and salt packets, of hands tapping the tops of cups to settle the ice. A white van opens its back doors and transforms into a velvet cave lit by battery-powered fairy lights. Across the aisle, a couple sets folding chairs side by side and drapes one blanket across both, so that the space between them disappears. A few cars over, a grandfather lights a citronella candle and sets it on a hubcap, and the small flame establishes its tiny kingdom. The mosquitoes come with the patience of librarians. The bats follow quick and precise, plucking them from the dark in clean little arcs. Up near the projection booth, the square window brightens, then dims, then brightens again as if someone is checking the breathing of a sleeping giant. Behind you, a group cheers softly as they manage to sync their radio. Ahead, a little boy discovers the miracle of how sound seems to pour from nowhere into the car, opens his mouth like he might catch it, and turns to announce this to a baby brother who, under a knit cap, is already practicing the old drive-in art of sleeping through everything. Your eyes drift across the patchwork of license plates, counties from an hour away, a neighbouring state the next town over. The whole field feels like a map with everyone's week pinned to it. Work boots kicked under seats, gym bags shoved to the side, a tie draped over a headrest like a surrender flag. Friday has a certain weight that's different from the other days. It slides off shoulders and into the grass, and you can feel it in the way people stretch their legs out in front of them and finally let their voices get quiet. In that quiet, the old speaker poles look almost ceremonial, little monuments to a time when the world insisted that sound arrived tethered by wires. A firefly blinks near the rearview mirror, and for a second you imagine it's a primeval projector testing its bulb. You lean your head back. The ceiling fabric has a tiny constellation of pinpricks that you've never noticed before. Far off, the town's water tower wears the last light like a halo. The breeze brings a whiff of rain that probably won't come. A plane stitches a slow seam across the dark, and you try to guess the stories inside it. Tired travellers, weekend adventurers, someone pressing a forehead to the window and looking down at this exact small galaxy of cars and wondering what movie is playing. Somewhere a cassette clicks and flips sides with the mechanical tenderness of a bygone era. The warm-up music slips to a hush. A hush answers it back from the field, moving lane by lane like a ripple. The screen drinks the night until it's not white anymore but a luminous grey, pulsing faintly with a promise. The projection window brightens once more, and a narrow beam reaches out, testing the distance, as if tracing the shape of the evening before committing ink to paper. It falls short and retracts. Someone in the front row yawns the slow, contagious yawn of permission, the kind that spreads without hurry. A door closes gently, and a line of silhouettes settles. The countdown leader will flash soon, those stuttering numbers, that soft clatter of frames. There will be a quick blink of dust motes in the beam, and the speakers will clear their throats in a tiny chorus, and for a moment, between breath and picture, the whole field will be listening to its own heartbeat, waiting the way a shoreline waits for the first small wave of the tide, just before it rolls forward and keeps rolling. It starts in the kitchen, always the kitchen, where the night is measured in containers and the sound of lids finding their threads. The list lives on the fridge in a scribble that has outlived 3 pens. Blankets, chairs, cups with lids that actually seal, bug spray, a sweater for when the air changes its mind. The cooler yawns open on the counter like a small white boat, and into it go ice packs with the names of old injuries, ankle, shoulder, back, followed by cans that knock together with a satisfying chime. Someone wraps sandwiches in wax paper, the crinkle of it a kind of promise. Someone else counts napkins, a ritual doomed to be forgotten later when mustard sprints ahead of the bun. In the cabinet, there's a bag of popcorn kernels intended for stovetop heroics. You shake a handful into a pot and the first pops feel like a scout reporting back from the frontier. Yes, the heat is here. Butter melts in its own private weather system, and you toss the golden confetti with a spoon the size of a canoe paddle. A zip-top bag swallows the result with a soft, salty sigh. You add a few secret shakes of something from an unlabeled jar because this is your house blend. A whisper of paprika, the idea of sugar, a memory of cheese from a braver time. The bag bulges and sits on the counter like a smug cat. The pantry contributes its oddities. Twizzlers braided shyly together. A sleeve of crackers that always breaks in the middle no matter how carefully you carry it. That one thermos with a stubborn lid that insists on a full body negotiation. You test it with water. It leaks a little. Of course it does. And you wrap it in a hand towel that already has a coffee comet stain on it. A veteran of previous missions. You add paper straws because they look cheerful even though they go faint halfway through the drink. You tuck in metal ones as backup. You toss in a roll of paper towels that will masquerade as plates, bibs, and tablecloth. The drawer coughs up a small army of rubber bands, an obstinate potato chip clip, and a few packets of salt and pepper from restaurants you can't place, but they're coming too. On the hall chair sits the movie blanket, the soft one with the impossible-to-find corner. You hold it up like a flag and it drapes down in a river. Somebody's elbow finds that corner instantly, because they always do. Pillows appear, 2 per person because the first pillow is for your head and the second is for hugs when the plot twists. A folded quilt joins the pile for those who prefer ballast to fluff. The dog watches with the skepticism of a creature who has learned that piles like this sometimes mean going to the vet. Not tonight, you tell them, and clip the seatbelt harness to their collar anyway. A bandana is knotted around a furry neck because even dogs deserve a costume for the ritual. Shoes get negotiated. Sandals for the stroll to the snack bar. Sneakers for the gravel that likes to punish bare toes. A pair of wool socks rolled and stuffed into someone's pocket because later will be later. A hoodie with a ripped cuff is declared lucky and wins a spot by the door. A sun hat is grabbed and then set down again because the sun is clocking out early tonight. Someone says maybe a rain jacket to the weather app as if it's a person and gets the kind of shrug only a cartoon cloud can give. 2 umbrellas are packed on principle. If not needed, they will serve as ceremonial symbols warding off precipitation. In the garage, the folding chairs live on a hook that complains every time you lift them down. The hinges are stiff with weekendness. You open one and it fights you, then gives, then decides to be generous. Someone finds the little side table with the cup holders that never met a cup they could hold. You consider the big camping chairs with headrests and then picture the trunk as a game of Tetris. The smaller ones win by geometry. A roll of duct tape is added because history teaches that duct tape is the treaty negotiator between reality and plans. The trunk opens to its usual museum of artifacts. A beach towel with honourable sand still embedded in its fibres. A bungee cord of unknown origin. A single glove that insists it once had a twin. You build the night like a mason laying stones. Cooler first, then chairs tucked upright, blanket packed, so it can be grabbed without displacing the cosmos. Pillows sneak into the negative space, forming a soft perimeter around the harder edges. The lantern with the rubber button, which turns on in the trunk at least once every month, gets tested and approved. The citronella candle pretends to be dignified, but you know it will drip in a way that argues with the laws of gravity. Into a pie tin it goes, to keep the car from smelling like a summer camp disaster. Someone brings the electrics basket, a wicker compromise between modern life and a desire to look charming. In it, a portable radio so you don't drain the car battery, fresh AA batteries that roll like marbles, a small power bank, a tangle of charging cables that would impress a snake charmer, and an old aux cord with stubborn opinions about which devices it will tolerate. The flashlight is heavy and loyal, the headlamp makes everyone look like a miner, and both are tossed in because darkness is a situation, not a problem. You add the FM sticky note with the drive-in's frequency from last time, a relic from a glove box that also surrenders a fossilised peppermint and a concession stub from a summer that already feels like it belongs to mythology. You consult the checklist with the solemnity of a pilot. Tickets? Ordered online and printed just in case internet decides to reenact the 1990s. Cash. A mason jar of coins clinks with the civic optimism of exact change. Crumpled bills stand by for popcorn diplomacy. IDS. Because since when does buying a hot dog require identification? But worth avoiding the debate. Hand wipes, yes. Hand sanitizer, yes. A small first aid kit sailed in from the hiking pack because paper cuts from straw wrappers are a thing, and you're not here to be caught off guard. Tissues, sunscreen, lip balm, hair ties. Someone yells, toothpicks, myrtles. Oh. They've just remembered the passwords to the kingdom, and a tiny plastic case is produced from an ancestral purse. Kitchen becomes wardrobe for a minute. Pyjamas for the little ones in case the second feature turns into a lullaby. A soft beanie hat packed for a head that got chilly last time. The dog's blanket, which smells like love and a little like a puddle, is folded and placed where the dog approves. A collapsible water bowl is snapped into shape and then accordion folded back down because it enjoys its party trick. Treats are counted out. 1 per half hour if the dog were in charge, 2 for the first hour if the humans are, and sealed in the pocket that will require a treasure map later. The air in the house takes on that specific flavour of departure. Doors opening and closing, a chorus of "Did you get?" and "I thought you were getting," punctuated by small victories. Someone finds the bug spray after a short campaign behind the laundry detergent, and its rattle sounds like maracas announcing a festival nobody asked permission to hold. A sweater goes missing and is found in a place that no longer surprises anyone, on the back of a chair that acts as a Bermuda Triangle for textiles. The last glass in the rack is rinsed and capped. The last light in the hallway is switched off. The last person to the door becomes the designated key checker, patting pockets in a rhythm that could be recorded and sold as a sleep track. The porch light flips on and the world outside is suddenly blackberries and twilight. The car greets you with that universal welcome of warmed vinyl and the ghost of pine-scented air freshener from 3 months ago. Seats adjust, mirrors are obeyed. The trunk closes with the kind of finality that says, everything now has a place. A neighbour watering their hydrangeas lifts a hand. You raise a cooler in response, which is another kind of wave. The sky is still more blue than black, and the treetops hold the last filaments of sun like they're keeping them safe for tomorrow. Before you go, you step back and do the ritual look over as if the car itself is a campsite. Doors closed, Windows cracked enough for the dog to approve. Headlights off, then on, then off again just to reassure the future. In the back seat, the smallest human negotiates which stuffed animal serves as tonight's ticket-taking usher, and the chosen bear is given responsibilities commensurate with the role. A teenager insists that they don't need a jacket and grabs it anyway because cold happens to other people until it happens to you. Someone double knots laces, someone else double knots a ponytail. The dog sneezes and is told they're doing a great job already. You slide into the driver's seat and the steering wheel fits your hands like repetition is a kind of grace. The radio blinks awake. A soft song from junior high finds you unguarded, and you let it. The route is the same one your feet could walk without a map. 2 turns past the bakery, the left at the mural where the astronaut holds a bouquet, the road that dips near the old mill and smells like damp stone even on dry days. But you're not pulling away yet because every ritual has one last backstage moment. Back in the house, a quick dash, you snag the thing that always almost gets left. A roll of quarters, a deck of cards, the Polaroid camera, with film that demotes everyone to a 1978 version of themselves. You check the back door. You tap the stove knobs in the sequence you've always tapped them, an old superstition with perfect success. The whispering clock on the microwave notes the time and nods you on with no judgment about being 5 minutes later than planned. On your way out, you grab the porch blanket that lives on the chair by the door, because redundancy is the blanket's love language, and the night might ask for a little more softness. At the curb, you tuck a map into the console even though the phone knows the way. Some objects are comfort food. You press the cooler lid one last time, feeling the tight seal that means the ice will dog paddle patiently through the first feature. In the glove box, you slide in the tiny star chart a friend printed for you, just in case the clouds let the constellations eavesdrop while the hero makes a speech. The bungee cord is suddenly useful for convincing the chair bag not to unzip mid-ride. The duct tape makes itself big in the corner to suggest it could also fix minor existential concerns if asked nicely. A voice from the back seat says, "We forgot the napkins," and 4 hands simultaneously hold up napkins, a paper towel roll, and a clean dish towel like offerings to a household god. "We forgot the ice," says another voice, and the cooler burps cold in reply. A final checklist item leaps from someone's head and lands in the trunk, the tiny garbage bags you use because you like to believe you leave places better than you found them. The dog yawns in a way that looks like a small opera. Keys. Seatbelts whisper home. The turn signal clicks like a metronome warming up for a slow song. The car eases into the street. The house recedes with its windows glowing, and you feel the night gather itself around the windshield, patient and gentle. The dashboard hum becomes a thread you follow. You call down the list in a sing-song one more time, blankets, chairs, cups, bug spray, sweaters, and it comes back to you not as items, but as a rhythm you've learnt by heart. Somewhere between your block and the main road, the car changes from transportation to living room, from errand to ritual, from a day you are in to a night you're making. The snack bar pulls at you like a lighthouse, all chrome edges and warm bulbs, a little island of brightness floating in a sea of car roofs. The door sighs open and the room greets you with a weather change. It is always summer in here, no matter what the night is doing. The floor gives under your shoes with a soft tack from 1,000 tiny sugar spills, and above the counter a painted menu glows in easy primary colours. Popcorn, dogs, pretzels, nachos, sodas, sweets, with prices that read less like math and more like a dare to be generous. Somewhere deep behind the glass, the popcorn kettle breathes. Every few seconds it exhales a buttery gust that fogs the display for a heartbeat and clears again to reveal a slow snowfall of flakes. It is a small miracle machine, a brass drum and a heating element teaming up with patience and pressure. Inside each kernel, a single drop of water waits inside a hard jacket. The heat coaxes that drop into steam until the jacket can't hold a secret any longer. pop. And the inside turns out starchy and silly, a white blossom that somehow smells like every matinee you've ever loved. You stand there longer than you mean to, watching the physics of comfort happen in real time. The line is not a line so much as an ambling congregation, everyone leaning into the glass with elbows and smiles, making little decisions that feel big. A teenager with a visor and a name tag juggles the register, the cheese pump, and 4 different conversations with an ease that makes you trust them with your evening. Layered butter? They ask, like a friend who knows your tricks. You nod because there are families and then there are bag-building philosophies, and yours requires geology, a shovel of popcorn, a golden rain from the steel spout, a shake, a salt, repeat, so every handful tastes like you meant it. Salt shakers squat near the napkins like small lighthouses. Some are classic, just salt and a few clumps that won't be talked out of their friendships. Others are exotic, sour cream and onion, white cheddar, a mysterious ranch explosion that promises drama. A dusty jar labelled yeast sits off to the side, a whisper from the health food friend you had in college who taught you that comfort can be savoury and bright at the same time. You spot a tiny sign handwritten in marker. Try cinnamon sugar on kettle corn, and for a second you consider becoming a different person tonight. The soda tower hisses and sings a watery hymn. Ice clatters into cups with a crystalline cheer. The lever is nudged, and a ribbon of fizzing sweetness coils up like a genie finding its shape. Straws rattle in their sleeve. Lids pop on with a polite snap. You pretend to deliberate between sizes, even though everyone knows this dance ends with the cup that could be mistaken for a timpani. The staff keeps a little bowl of lemon slices near the water spout, and they look like coins, like someone tipped the universe. On the hot side of the counter, a man in a white paper hat turns hot dogs with tongs that click twice between each movement like they're clearing their throat. The buns rest in a warming drawer, stacked like nap time, soft as a promise. Beside them, a roller grill whispers, turning sausages in a slow-motion ballet, and it's suddenly very important to choose between mustard smugness and ketchup nostalgia. There's a pump for cheese that sighs with every press, filling little paper cups for nachos, each chip a small shovel for digging into molten sun. The jalapenos swim in their vinegar lake, green coins you can add or bravely decline. A glass case keeps pretzels drowsing against its foggy window, salt crystals catching the light like small stars. A funnel cake station sleeps until someone utters its name, and then the batter wakes up in lace patterns that become a carnival in 10 breaths. Oil whispering, a dusting of powdered snow, a paper plate cradling something that tastes like the fair stole a piece of heaven and learned to fry it. Off to the side there's a jar the size of a fishbowl full of giant dill pickles. It looks both serious and funny, as if the idea of pickles at a movie was invented by a dream that decided to stick around. Candy boxes line up with square shoulders, milk duds, raisinets, snowcaps, Twizzlers coiled like red rope. There are newcomers too, gummy things that pretend to be sharks or rings or galaxies, but the old names tug the strongest. A small child presses their nose to the glass and narrates a plan that will not survive contact with bedtime. One of everything. Behind them, a teen counts coins carefully, stacking them in 20s on the counter, and the cashier slows their movements a notch to match the gravity of the purchase. There is choreography at the condiment counter. Ketchup blooms in paper cups like midnight flowers. Mustard writes its signature on hot dog tops with a flourish. Relish tries to escape the spoon but is gently persuaded. Someone in the back adds onions and looks the way poets look after a good line. Napkins fan out like a deck of cards everyone gets to draw from. A stranger taps your shoulder and says, "You can skip ahead, 'cause you're the only one here for salt," and they are practicing community in the language of cues. In the middle of it all, a bell dings. Not a real bell, just some piece of metal that learned to announce. But each ring is permission. Orders slide down the counter. Large popcorn, layered. 2 dogs, both with everything. 1 pretzel, lots of salt, lots. The counter kid has the memory of a stage actor and the reflexes of a short-order saint. They tip the popcorn bin with a sweep, and the flakes fall like a gentle avalanche. The butter spout hangs from its hook like an IV of happiness. Your turn arrives and the world narrows to a warm, buttery decision. Could you? You start, and they're already doing it. Half fill, butter, salt, shake. A practiced wrist twist that makes the bag breathe. Then more popcorn. Another golden pour. One last shake. They pass it over, its sides hot, its top rolled with a single, efficient fold. The cup is placed beside it. A lid appears like a magician's coin. The straw is clicked through with a pleasing resistance. You add a napkin stack that would make your grandmother proud and a slightly embarrassed handful of those little peppermint discs because your mouth has its own intermission rules. The room is its own small town. 2 retirees compare notes on the second feature and whether the lead has still got it. A group of high schoolers consults a phone and laughs at something none of us will ever know. One of them holds a cardboard tray like a sacred offering. A tiny kid pulls on a parent's sleeve and asks the same question asked since the invention of waiting. Is it our turn yet? A woman in a denim jacket leaves $2 in the tip jar and says, "You keep us going," and the jar accepts the compliment as if it holds not money but gratitude in paper form. When the kettle operator swings open the drum to pour a fresh cascade into the bin, a dozen kernels pop in a jittery coda, and for a second everyone in line turns their head the same way. It's not quite a cheer, but it's close. A silent acknowledgement that the show doesn't only happen out there on the giant screen. It happens here too, where heat rearranges plain things into parties, where salt becomes punctuation, where the space between hunger and joy is bridged by scoops and spoons and small kindnesses. You balance your spoils like a juggler who chooses peace over flourish. The bag's warmth radiates through your palm. You can feel individual kernels shifting like a pocketful of soft pebbles. The drink sweats against your knuckles, tiny cold signatures slipping down to your wrist. You pause at the door to shoulder it open, and the night meets you with crickets and laughter, and the steady low murmur of radios finding themselves. A moth greets the neon S, approves, and drifts toward the darkness beyond the porch light. On the way back through the lanes, you practice the ancient art of stepping sideways between bumpers, of lifting the tray just enough to clear mirrors, of becoming smaller without actually getting shorter. A child reaches out from a car window for one heroic kernel and is granted amnesty. 2 friends sitting on a tailgate make room so you can pass, and one of them leans in to ask, not for the first time in human history, "Did you get extra napkins?" You lift your chin toward the tidy mountain beneath your elbow and win a nod that says you're doing this right. At your car, the door opens like a curtain parting, and your people make space the way people do when food arrives. Knees angle, hands appear. A quick shuffle turns the back seat into a coffee table. The first handful is always hotter than you expect. You ride it out, and when the salt and heat fade, what's left is a clean, quiet sweetness. Someone takes a sip too big and winces. Someone else invents a straw hierarchy. The bag settles in the shared gravity of laps and elbows. A few flakes tumble into the dark and vanish, becoming currency for ants and history for birds. Across the lot, a few rows over, an ancient convertible serves its popcorn in a hat, and the hat looks pleased. A family in lawn chairs uses a frisbee for a plate. A couple in matching hoodies eats in perfect alternating bites like metronomes in conversation. The snack bar door opens and closes, and each time a warm gust crosses the gravel and reaches you. A second-hand preview of comfort, a reminder that the lobby is still singing its buttery hymn even as the field grows quiet and the screen prepares its first sentence of the night. A cartoon curtain sweeps across the screen with a flourish that squeaks like felt, and suddenly the night is a vaudeville stage. Out marches a chorus line of snacks with stick-figure legs and the showbiz confidence of objects that have never doubted their purpose. A soda cup bounces in place as if keeping time for the band you can't see. A box of candy tips its cap. The hot dog appears last, of course, performing a sideshow wiggle before swan-diving into a bun that opens like a dependable friend. The crowd reacts the way they always do, an amused hush that feels like the whole field just smiled at the same joke. The music is cheerful in that way only intermission can manage. Bright horns and friendly drums stitched to a melody you could hum even if you've never learned it on purpose. The speakers, whether the old cast-iron clamshell hanging from a window or the FM radio in your dash, give the tune a gentle fuzz that makes it sweeter, like a memory with soft edges. The lyrics aren't orders, just a nudge, and you feel your hand move toward the door handle almost involuntarily, the way a foot taps when the right song finds it. Above the cartoon parade, a countdown clock appears, a big round face with numbers that tick away in confident loops. 5 minutes to go, then 4:59, 4:58. The kind of time that feels generous, like breathing room for a small adventure. A notice floats up. Refreshments now being served, and then another, bouncier. Visit our sparkling restrooms. Someone whistles at the word sparkling because it's doing a lot of work, but the spirit is optimistic and optimism is contagious. The concession door becomes a revolving portal. People flow in, people flow out, carrying paper boats and wax cups like offerings. Lanes turn into footpaths as silhouettes crisscross in the beam of the projector, each one gaining a halo for a few steps. The tiny theatre of etiquette begins. Doors closed softly, headlights covered with hands, radios turned down to murmurs so the field keeps its hush. Somewhere a horn peeps once, just once, the drive-in equivalent of "excuse me." Closer to the screen, children who have been pretending to be still all evening finally bounce free, the grass beneath them springy and forgiving. Some lots still have the old playground, a half-moon of swings and a seesaw that speaks in a slow creak, and it receives them like a favourite aunt. Kids fly forward, shoes flashing white at the ark's top, and for a moment every swing seems to pause against the sky, as if deciding whether to become a comet. Fireflies volunteer as stage lights, approving each landing with a blink. A toddler places a solemn leaf into a parent's palm and announces it is money. The parent purchases this leaf with a kiss on the forehead and pockets it like legal tender. Teenagers, at intermission, are a genre unto themselves. They drift toward the back fence in small constellations, passing a phone around that never quite settles on one hand for long. A boy laughs a little too loud. A girl tucks hair behind an ear that has already been tucked once. Someone's varsity jacket becomes a blanket, then a pillow, then an excuse to sit closer. A sip is offered and declined, and offered again. The clock overhead rolls from 4 to 3, but in this corner time is set to the speed of glances. Inside the projection booth, a different ritual plays out. Through the little window you glimpse a silhouette lean over a console. If it's an older house, you might catch the dance of reels being prepped. Cans opened like treasure chests, a length of film threaded with the reverence reserved for old maps. A white sliced tape is smoothed with the thumb. If it's a digital setup, the movements are smaller, more like a pianist adjusting sheet music and less like a ship's crew hoisting sails, but the care is the same. A note in glowing letters hops onto the screen. Please remember your speaker. And a few of the elders chuckle, remembering when that was not a joke but a weekly headline. Along the perimeter, little pockets of life open like books. A family unrolls a picnic behind their hatchback, every container labelled in a handwriting that makes you want to sit up straighter. Someone has brought a thermos of soup and is decanting it into enamel mugs, the steam writing brief messages that only the stars can read. Two old friends in lawn chairs compare favourite drive-in trailers from when they were teenagers, the words trailers and teenagers fitting together like puzzle pieces from a box that hasn't been lost. A couple in the cab of a truck invents a game that involves guessing the next cartoon. The dancing popcorn bucket, one says. No, the drum major pickle, says the other, and they both wait, satisfied, like the night will answer personally. Back at the screen, the hot dog returns, joined by a kernel of popcorn with jazz hands and a soda straw that attempts a tap routine with one foot. They promenade along the bottom edge, sometimes breaking formation to flirt with a dancing note of music, or to peek behind a velvet curtain that pretends to be there. Local ads slip into the show like neighbours borrowing sugar. A car wash promising Saturday shine, a bowling alley with cosmic lanes and league nights, a farm stand just past mile marker 9, with peaches that look like they could heal something. The typography changes from ad to ad, each message a little time capsule from the year it was made. The restroom line becomes its own society. Reunions occur between strangers who last met 20 minutes ago on the way in. Gossip is the currency and everyone is rich. Which stall has the good lock? Does the left-hand soap dispenser actually dispense? Rumours of extra paper towels near the back inspire pilgrimages. A compliment flies, love your sweater, and a story returns. It was my sister's, and for a breath the night reveals its chandelier of small connections. Near the sinks, a child practices the ancient art of making tiny soap bubbles without being officially told they're allowed to, and the bubbles drift like unambitious planets toward the fluorescent lights. The countdown face hits 3 minutes and the music brightens, as if encouraging last-minute adventures. A few people jog lightly back to their cars with the diplomatic shuffle of those carrying liquid. A popcorn bag sheds a comet tail of kernels that skip across the gravel like stones on a pond. Someone in the front row sets down a chessboard on a tailgate, and the pieces wobble as if they've been out cruising all evening too. Moves are made at a pace that suggests neither opponent especially minds losing. On certain nights, the sky participates. A low cloud takes the colour of the screen, and, for a breath, the dancing snacks have a faint mirror above them. Bats stitch the seam between light and dark with crisp, economical turns. Dew gathers quietly on hoods and roofs, a thin lace that your fingertip can write your initials in. Out past the fence line, crickets hit their stride, a chorus that somehow tucks itself between the notes of the jingle, never stepping on the melody, always finding the open spaces. A short reel of coming attractions interrupts the snack ballet. Explosions bloom in miniature. Comedies shout through silent captions. A tender scene glows like a lantern in a window. The trailers feel a little brighter than the movie will, like postcards from vacations you might be if you had 2 lives to spend. Titles splash across the screen with confidence, promising dates and seasons that sound like appointments with your future self. The clock returns in the corner almost shyly, as if aware it must now share attention. At a folding table near the back, a volunteer raffles off a t-shirt with the drive-in's logo. The kind of shirt that will become sleepwear, then painting shirt, then keepsake rag. Then, if it's lucky, quilt square. Tickets are traded for dollars and hope, and when a kid's number hits, the whole table claps with big, warm hands. The kid holds the shirt up to their chest and sways once, twice like trying on a small identity. You make a quick stop at the condiment station, where the late shift philosophers gather. Relish is a personality trait, says a man with a fork moustache. No, it's onions, counters a woman applying a perfect mustard zigzag that would win technical points. Someone improvises a napkin hack that might change the world, or at least your lap. The pump cheese gives a satisfied sigh with each press, dutiful as a metronome. A lone slice of pickle slips free and flops onto the counter with a comic plop. Its fate is sealed by a passerby who believes in destiny. Back at your car, the living room reassembles itself. Blankets are redistributed like land grants. The lucky hoodie changes shoulders. A fresh mountain of napkins appears, brought by a neighbour who returns the favour of your early assault. Radios refine the frequency with tiny clicks and shivers of static. The signal slides into place and everyone exhales without agreeing to. Someone in your row raises a thermos and murmurs a toast that is almost a spell. To Fridays, to good screens, to nights that don't ask for explanations. The clock dips under 2 minutes and the cartoons do their encore hammy and sincere, bowing to every car in the lot. A little etiquette short plays. Please dim your lights, mind your neighbours, keep our drive-in clean, illustrated by politely scolding raccoons and a broom with charisma. Nobody minds being instructed by animated cleaning tools. It feels like being asked by a kindergarten teacher who never once needed to raise their voice. In the booth, the silhouette leans forward, a hand hovering over a switch that has learned the exact weight of this moment. On the ground, voices taper as if they're on dimmers. A couple negotiates one last seat swap. A kid negotiates one last sip. A dog circles twice and decides the blanket is finally arranged to canine specifications. The breeze turns a page, the screen glows a little steadier. The music makes a graceful exit down a staircase you can almost see, and the countdown keeps moving, not in a rush, just sure of itself, noting that there is still a minute, then a little less than a minute, then just enough time to tuck the napkins where you like them, and ease your feet into a better position and pull the blanket up, the night settling into its favourite posture while the numbers, polite as ushers, guide everyone back to their places. The screen throws its silver across the lot and turns every face into a small moon. You feel it first in your ribs, the bright swell of a scene that lands right where your courage lives, and then in your fingers, which suddenly don't know what to do with themselves. They tidy the edge of the blanket, count the kernels in your palm, straighten a cup that wasn't crooked. Beside you, someone you're still getting used to takes the same inventory of small tasks, and between your fidgeting two quiet orbits begin, close enough to feel the same gravity. Dialogue from the movie brushes the windows like a tide, then slips away so the crickets can say their piece. A laugh rolls across the lot, gentle and shared, and you both catch it, exhale it, look at each other and then at anything else. The radio hums like a warm lamp. Under the blanket, the space between your knees feels like a held breath. You've practiced lines in your head, weather, school, that book you pretended not to care about, but none of them are better than the soft electricity of doing nothing together. Condensation finds the glass in slow spirals. Your words paint brief clouds that fade as they rise. A fingertip, yours, then not yours, drifts to the window and draws a vague constellation, dots linked by guesswork, a private sky. Someone adds a star you didn't know was missing. You claim a corner and make a tiny smiley face because it asked for very little courage, and the smiley face smiles back until the fog swallows it whole. The windshield becomes a chalkboard that erases itself, a place where you can say more than you're ready to say, then let the night tidy up. Outside, other small universes spin. Two figures in lawn chairs lean closer at the same time and laugh at the coincidence like it was planned. In a pickup bed, boots sit neatly toe-to-toe as if they're keeping each other from bolting. On a blanket, a hand migrates and pauses near another hand the way a shore approaches a rock, wave after a cautious wave, pretending each attempt is accidental, then pretending the contact is too. The movie gives everyone cover with a loud scene about something very not this, and the field obliges by laughing a little louder than necessary. Back at your dashboard, straw wrappers become oracle bones. You twist one tight, pull it into a knot. If the knot closes, they like you, someone once said in a cafeteria lit like an aquarium. The paper refuses, then relents at the last moment. A tiny surrender. You do not announce the omen, but you tuck it into the cup holder like a whisper that wanted a pocket. When your elbow bumps theirs, Both of you apologise at the exact same syllable and grin at how perfectly unoriginal you're being. The popcorn has a tide chart of its own. Early handfuls are cautious, diplomatic, one for you, one for me, salt shaken like a treaty. The bag rustles like leaves. Somewhere amid the third act of the first feature, discretion is abandoned. A hand goes in without asking and comes out with treasure, comes out with a kernel stuck to a sweater, comes out with the fingerprint of butter. You notice the fleck, reach without thinking, brush it away with the back of a knuckle. The touch is nothing, the nothing is everything. The bag sits between you like a bridge you built without meaning to. Breath warms the little cave you've made. Glass fog blooms, then beads, and tiny rivers run downward, charting a map of places you haven't named. The heater fan at the lowest setting draws a clean crescent on the windshield. You both watch it widen, an eyelid opening. On the side window, someone traces initials that are almost yours and almost theirs, and then turns them into a harmless shape, a leaf, a comet, a spiral, so that either could be true later. The wiper thumps once across the front, a heartbeat you didn't ask for, and outside the world reappears, the shadow of the next car, a moth considering the dome light, the beam of the projector reaching through dust like a rope you could climb. A scene turns tender, and the radio grows quiet as if to keep from stepping on it. The actor's face fills the screen with an expression that has been practiced in mirrors since mirrors were invented, and the lot falls under the spell of a feeling everyone recognises in their own private dialect. In your car, you feel your shoulders do that courteous tilt toward each other that humans learned from leaning over maps. Your sentences shorten and get softer. The blanket becomes a country that changes borders without paperwork. Your feet find each other and decide to coexist. Elsewhere in the rows, the night moves along collecting these tiny treaties. In a sedan with cloudy headlights, two people in their 70s share a thermos and remember a first date that involved more courage and less suspension. The fog on their windows is modest and tidy, a quiet breathiness that looks like gratitude. In a hatchback that still smells like new plastic, a pair of friends spends 10 minutes pretending they are, only that then beheads a sleeve of candy with the aggression of people not pretending anymore. A convertible solves its condensation with the uncompromising argument of open air. They wear beanies and bravado and hold hands under a blanket like a secret everybody's too polite to mention. The lot is full of small, brave inventions. Someone turns their phone brightness to the lowest whisper and types a message they will never send. "You're my favourite part," then deletes it because not saying it sometimes says it more. Someone else presses their palm ovals onto the glass to make tiny portholes you can look through together, and you both lean toward the same circle. Your heads almost touch. They do, briefly, and then stay that way as if checking a carefully aligned instrument. A sleeve becomes a tissue for a laugh that turned into an eye water. A scarf becomes a boundary, then a hammock rope, then a knot. The two of you untie slowly, one finger each. There's a comedy bit on screen, a pratfall, a one-liner, and relief arrives like a warm coat shrugged onto cold shoulders. You take the chance to be louder again. You tell a story about a teacher who kept a cactus on the desk and insisted it listened. They tell one about a dog that ate a library card and got away with it because the librarian liked the dog more than rules. The fog finds the rhythm of your sentences and paints the windows in pulses, arriving and receding. You notice how their laugh climbs at the end, how it always returns to the same note, how your own laugh is practicing a harmony it didn't know it knew. On the glass, drawings accumulate like dream chalk. A tiny house with smoke from the chimney that looks suspiciously like hearts until it doesn't. A cartoon popcorn kernel throwing jazz hands. A lopsided star that becomes steadier when your two fingers trace it together. When the fan clears a crescent again, your art dissolves into rivers. You both watch the lines melt without complaint, unbothered, that some things are meant not to last longer than a scene. You share the drink under a peace treaty that pretends to be indifference. The straw says hello to both of you, then returns to waiting. An ice cube taps the lid and ticks like a slow metronome. Somewhere behind you, a truck bed gets a fresh blanket straight from a dryer bag. The smell of warm cotton drifts past and settles on your shoulders as if it belongs to your story too. A breeze presses a fingertip to the car and the fog blossoms again, velvety and private. A curtain that agrees to be drawn without anyone needing to pull it. Every drive-in has a moment when a joke or a shock lands, and the whole field responds in unison. A communal gasp, a ripple of no way, a laugh that travels like a thrown cap. You ride that wave together, and when it passes, you're closer by a fraction you could measure if you had the right tool. The radio whispers a little static like a record's quiet between tracks. Your hand goes looking for somewhere to rest and discovers a place on their forearm that seems to have been set aside for such discoveries. Their hand accepts the discovery as if it had been saving the receipt just in case, and then loses it on purpose. Fog finds the rear windows now, dimming the shapes of headlights into faraway planets. You glance up at the rearview mirror and it shows only your own car back at you, a small room floating in a friendly night. Outside this room, people are being brave in tiny doses, an extra beat of eye contact, a question asked without a hedge, a kindness repeated without calling attention to itself. Inside, everything important is happening at a polite volume. Your shoulder meets theirs in increments. Your voices adopt a near-field murmur, the tone humans use when something fragile is in the room and you don't want to disturb it. When the movie leans into quiet, you both lean too. The heater makes a little ship noise. Your breath fogs the glass and fades, fogs and fades. On the side window, the place where you wrote nothing in particular with a fingertip becomes clear again for a second, and the marks glow like fossils. Without making a fuss of it, your fingers tangle. Not a knot, not a grip, just the patient weave of two ideas that have decided to stop arguing about how they overlap. The blanket agrees to overlook the new arrangement. A line on screen earns a hush and a handful of sniffles. A turn you saw coming happens anyway, and still surprises you, the way the moon still surprises you even though you count on it. You look at each other because the movie asked you to. Because light found your faces and told them what to do, because sometimes the easiest courage is borrowed. Your noses almost tap. You both retreat the same half-inch and laugh softly into the tiny valley that created. There is time. The fog writes it on the glass over and over. Somewhere far down the row, someone taps defrost and the windshield clears in a sudden theatrical wipe, a curtain tugged in one swipe. In your car, you leave the curtain where it is. You let the night look away and it obliges, studiously interested in a moth, in the snack bar door, in the way the projector beam is full of glitter that must be dust but looks like magic. On the screen, a city glows or a farmhouse sleeps or a spaceship sighs. The particulars don't matter as much as the pulse. You feel it in your wrists now instead of your ribs, steadier, less treacherous. Popcorn dwindles to the broken salty marvels at the bottom, the ones you eat carefully because they want to crack a tooth. The drink becomes politely noisy as the straw learns about air. The heater keeps its truce with the damp. You draw one more line on the glass, just a small arc, and another line connects to it and another. A figure takes shape, lumpy and sincere, and you both recognize it at the same time. You give it eyes. They give it a ridiculous hat. It will live there until the next breath decides to turn it into rain. You are okay with this arrangement. Around you, the lot settles into that listening posture it gets when the story ties a knot. Radios soften by instinct. Someone coughs into a sleeve. A dog sighs like a tiny accordion. Your fingers, woven into that patient basket, do not announce themselves. Do not apply theories, do not draft manifestos. They simply stay. The window foggers, the window clears, the screen flickers, the night pretends not to notice. Somewhere between the last cartoon and the first real line of the feature, a quiet migration begins. Zippers whisper. Seatbelts click into Sabbath. Pajama pants with planets and dinosaurs and the entire alphabet appear from tote bags like flags of small countries. Socks with grippy stars replace sneakers. A fleece hoodie becomes a cape, then a pillowcase, then a negotiation. The car transforms, no longer a vehicle, but a living room with doors, a den with cup holders, a nursery that knows the way home without being told. The youngest insists on footy pyjamas even in July because the built-in bravery of having your toes disguised is not seasonal. Their zipper goes up with the solemnity of a rocket launch while a stuffed elephant is sworn into service as the usher who checks imaginary tickets at the blanket border. The middle child wears shorts over pyjama pants, a look that says both ready for bed and prepared to sprint to the snack bar should destiny call. The oldest pretends not to care about pyjamas at all, then produces a soft t-shirt so practiced by sleep that it has learned to be a lullaby. Parents become engineers of comfort. Seats recline 2 polite clicks, then a third because the sky asks for it. A quilt from the front hall, patched with fabrics that once were Halloween costumes and a curtain, unfolds and settles across a pair of small legs, then drifts to cover a third, then is folded back because someone's foot is hot. Actually, very hot, like a volcano. Pillows arrive with the formality of parade floats and are placed under heads, bellies, knees. A rolled-up beach towel gains a second life as a neck bolster and is granted a name, the cinnamon roll, by a child who can't yet pronounce bolster and doesn't need to. On the parcel shelf behind the back seat, glow sticks wake up and stretch to their full supernatural bloom. They are turned and snapped and shaken into neon commas that punctuate the night. Bracelets become crowns, crowns become lassos, lassos become doorway markers for the blanket fort's entrance. A parent whispers the treaty that has been negotiated since caravans. Glow sticks stay low, never up in the front window, and they nod in solemn, glowing agreement until the first chase scene when neon forgetfulness returns like the tide. Dinner becomes currency, goldfish crackers, gummy bears, apple slices, a singular carrot stick adopted for symbolism. A small plastic bento box is revealed and regarded with the reverence usually reserved for treasure maps. Compartments open like doors on a dollhouse, triangle sandwiches, a cookie that has seen some things since the grocery aisle, a handful of almonds that will be Dickensian orphans by intermission. The rule about sticky things is repeated, then amended, then waved away because it is Friday and napkins are plenty. Sippy cups align along the centre console in order of bedtime. The earliest sleeper gets the least sugar and the strongest lid. Stories bloom in pockets. The little one asks if the people in the movie can see us. A parent answers no, and that's why it's safe to make your own face about the bad parts. The oldest announces that they are definitely not scared of the bad parts, and draws a blanket up to the nose in case the bad parts are pragmatic and enjoy jump scares. The middle one makes a bed out of jackets and tells their sleeping gecko, shaped like a beanie toy, that tonight they live in a theatre and must learn theatre manners. No hissing during quiet scenes, no shedding unless in the post-credits. Across the row, other cars are performing parallel magic. In a minivan with a string of battery fairy lights along the ceiling, like a constellation learned by heart, a grandmother is folding tiny socks into even tinier balls while telling how her first drive-in had a playground under the screen and all the kids came back with grass knees. In a sedan with a dachshund, 2 parents build a ramp out of a yoga mat so the senior dog can climb onto a lap and sigh a long, grateful sigh that smells faintly of biscuit. A pickup bed has become a front porch, rocking chair swapped for camp chairs, a flannel spread that keeps trying to impersonate a river as the kids scoot and rescoot. The second feature loiters at the edge of the evening like a patient uncle, and bedtime creeps in on little cat feet. The youngest fights it with a question every 90 seconds. Why is the moon following us? How loud is a cricket if you are a cricket? Can popcorn be breakfast? Parents answer with the wisdom of the road, because it likes us, as loud as it needs to be, only if we hide the evidence. The child nods as if satisfied, and surrenders half a yawn. Their eyelids become excellent negotiators and strike a deal with gravity. Someone's pillow slips and a tender, expert hand slides it back into place without waking the head it holds. Someone else's sock has committed to freedom. A parent tucks it back on with a practiced thumb, unfolding little toes like petals and seating them where they belong. The movie swells and the little one's breathing joins the soundtrack. The soft wheeze of a day completing its circle. A tiny snore begins across the lot and zigzags through the radios like a firefly. Nobody minds. The stars lean closer and pretend not to stare. A parent drapes a light blanket over an already sleeping child with the precision of a card trick. The blanket floats, lands, and somehow does not wake the sleeper, because parents learn the aerodynamics of textiles the way sailors learn wind. They allow themselves a 5-second stretch that cracks one shoulder and redraws their spine, then tuck themselves back into the narrow space offered by 40 inches of seat and the heavy head that has annexed their arm. The conquered limb tingles and goes noble. In the car next door, siblings practice a truce under a single shared quilt. A border is drawn with an invisible pen down the middle, and both swear to honour it until the plot gets good, at which point it will be abandoned without apology. The older one invents a horror story about a friendly ghost who only haunts messy rooms. The younger one swears their room is clean enough to scare away even the bravest ghosts, and wipes cracker dust into the blanket with the confidence of a statesperson. When the hero on screen whispers, both siblings lean forward at the same angle, like a hinge in a well-made door. There is a whole economy of whispers. Bathroom before you fall asleep. One more sip, then lid on tight. I'll carry them if they conk out. We can stay through the credits. Eyes adjust to the tiny glow of a travel clock tucked into the door pocket. Time becomes softer, measured not in minutes, but in scenes. A parent checks the charging power bank and the thermostat of a sleeping forehead with the same 2 fingers. Another parent counts the breaths of the baby, then catches themselves and smiles at the old habit, the way they still listen for the sound of sleep like it's a familiar song from upstairs. Bedtime objects achieve their final forms. A stuffed rabbit is promoted to captain and stationed at the window to watch for monsters, which do not visit drive-ins because the rabbit is intimidating, and also because the lot is full of other rabbits and bears, and a single well-loved dragon whose felt wing is held on by hope. A board book is open to the page with the whale, and closed again because the whale is enormous and reassuring, and bedtime thrives on repetition. A pacifier does its small, noble work. A soft humming starts, unsourced, maybe the projector, maybe the night, maybe the parent who can't help but hum when small hearts start to slow. The lot learns to tiptoe without feet. Doors open and shut with the softness found between fingers and metal when care is applied. Flashlights point groundward and move like slow comets. A family tiptoes past your bumper in single file, the middle child holding the bathroom key like a baton in a relay, solemn with responsibility. They return triumphantly. The key is hung on its nail by the snack bar with ceremony. In the retelling, the restroom's sparkling status is debated and eventually confirmed because it is fun to agree about something. Snack bar seconds become bedtime bribes. If your eyes stayed closed, there's a small mystery cookie later. Mystery cookies are the best kind of imaginary food. They don't crumble. A parent invents a new lullaby on the spot about the hero of the movie brushing their teeth, because sleep respects characters who maintain dental hygiene. Another parent tells, for the 19th time, the tale of the raccoon who loved the drive-in and only watched the scary parts through his fingers. Little arm mimic raccoon paws and then fall heavy. Somewhere up front, a faithful station wagon seats a grandmother between two slumbering grandkids. She knits with the light of the glove compartment, rose steady as the history of her hands. Every so often she pauses to slide a blanket higher on the smallest one, then returns to knit the night into a scarf that will eventually smell like butter and grass, and the faint, clean buzz of the radio. In the rearview mirror, the reflection of her needle flashes looks for all the world like the blinking of fireflies learning Morse code. The radio band becomes a lullaby of its own, the movie's score thinned by distance, thickened by crickets. Dialogue piffles through like wind in a screen door. The car's ceiling liner is suddenly a sky constellated by the holes where the interior light fixture clips. A brother tilts his head and connects them, a kite, a fish, a spoon, a shape that's supposed to be a dinosaur but looks suspiciously like a dog. A sister adds dots for eyes and declares the dog asleep. Then, satisfied that everyone is on message, she allows her own eyelids to slide down like curtains at intermission. Even the family rituals of discipline soften at the drive-in. Shh becomes a smile tap on the wrist. No becomes later. Sit still becomes scoot closer. Messes are postponed into tomorrow by the treaty called "We brought the big pack of wipes." The car wears its crumbs like confetti. Nobody minds. The dog curls in a circle so efficient it could be studied in geometry. When a dream makes one paw twitch, a child's hand finds it and rests there, palm to paw, until the dream lets go. The second feature drifts in like a tide. Music first, then picture. The way sleep comes to a tired child. Title cards wash the lot in cool blues, and then warm golds and the occasional alarm red. Each colour writes itself on pyjama sleeves and cheeks, a travelling aurora. Parents trade looks that say, "We can make it to the end." Parents trade looks that say, "Or we could leave at the turn." Decisions are deferred to future versions of themselves who will carry snoring people to beds and brush teeth that already forgot they were brushed. At the edge of the field, a train low whistles somewhere out beyond the trees, and the sound folds itself around the cars like a shawl. The night breathes in time with the sleepers. In a corner of the lot, a baby monitor glows soft green and relays the puff of tiny breaths to a pair of grateful shoulders. A teenager, face lit by a screen turned to lowest, writes a 2-sentence review of the film in a notes app, and then tucks the phone away because the rest of their notes are contained in the warmth at their ankle where a sibling's foot has strayed. Parents are secret smugglers of quiet joy. One hand finds the other on the centre console, careful not to disturb the kingdom of snacks and the small head pillowed in one lap. They watch a scene together through a single open slice of windshield left clear by the defroster, and pretend the rectangle is a window into their own living room, enlarged and roofless. In the clear band at the top of the fogged glass, the stars look like the holes in a colander, and the night feels like a kitchen where someone is boiling water for tomorrow's pasta and humming the song everyone knows without ever having learned it. A small voice stirs. "Where are we?" "At the movies." "Oh." The voice drifts again, visited by the kind of dream you only get when you fall asleep where you are not supposed to. The parent stays still a long time because stillness is a gift you are not always brave enough to open. The popcorn bag rustles and is silenced. The cup lid ticks as ice makes decisions. The little head finds a new place on a new arm, and the arm accepts the responsibility like a knight given a quest. The fort entrance is adjusted with 2 fingers. The stuffed elephant is rotated to face due north because the wind might change. The glow stick crown dims to a halo, and then to a memory. A soft whisper appoints tomorrow's breakfast as pancakes, which seals the night with an oath that is somehow more binding than any contract. Somewhere, a parent's phone alarm is quietly disabled. Morning will come when morning comes, and if the sun chooses mercy, it will arrive on tiptoe. Before the pictures do their bright work, the night tunes its instruments. There's the small civic hum of the lot itself, generators purring, a fan in the projection booth catching its rhythm, the soft shiver of a flag on its halyard. Then the first true sound slips in, a low, patient hiss as radios wake and begin fishing for the posted frequency, the dial passing through sermons and sports and static before it clicks into a clean band where the movie's heartbeat will live. In the older lanes, the metal speakers are still here, clamshells the size of a sandwich, mounted on silver poles, their braided cords looped like sleeping snakes. You lift one and feel the weight of it, the honest heaviness, the tiny perforations in its faceplate peppered with moth powder. Setting it on the window is a ceremony. The clamp bites the glass with a civilized clunk, and for a second you're a projectionist of sound, choosing where the world will enter your car. A thumb-sized dial offers a narrow country between too quiet and almost right. The speaker hums even when nothing's playing, a ghost frequency that tastes a little like yesterday. When the house trailer rolls and the horns jump in, the little box answers with a noble buzz, the exact fuzz that makes popcorn taste better. Most cars lean on FM now. The handwritten number on a chalkboard by the snack bar, 88.3, 90.7, 100 to 4 point something, becomes a destination. You click past news voices and a lonely saxophone, through a ragged fringe of static lint, and there it is, a tone, a test bar of music, then silence with intention. The first line of dialogue arrives clean as a glass of water. Stereo makes the cabin wider than the car. Footsteps move left to right. A door opens somewhere that feels like your passenger side. You adjust the volume to the level where the vowels live and leave headroom for storms and car chases. In this small room of seats and seatbelts and soft fabrics, the sound wraps you like a theatre curtain no one had to lift. Across the field it becomes a kind of choral experiment. Every vehicle is a speaker, every speaker a different throat. A sedan 2 rows up runs windows down and shares the mix with the night. A pickup 2 spaces over keeps it sealed and private, bass tucked into its upholstery. A boombox sits on a tailgate and does its honest best. The treble turned up to compensate for the big outdoors. If the wind is right, you catch a millisecond echo of your scene coming from the next lane, a smear of sound that makes the joke land twice. The lot becomes stereo on a grand scale. Tiny delays, a human reverb, hundreds of slightly unsynced agreements that somehow turn into one song. Then there are the non-movie instruments. Cricket scraping bew on wing, 1,000 fiddles tucked into the grass. Katydids lay down their mechanical maracas. Somewhere beyond the fence, frogs contribute a well-timed baritone. If it's July, cicadas buzz like neon transformers in the trees. If it's September, the leaves have a lower voice, a hush that shuffles when the breeze edits them. The snack bar adds percussion, scoops tapping, the sides of a popcorn bin, the small triumphant clatter of ice, a soda gun sighing syrup into fizz. The bell on the concession door hits its note, cheerful, consistent, as if it has practiced scales all day for this. Kids create their own Foley. A zipper whispers, Velcro makes a long, satisfied rip. A candy box opens with the drama of a safe, then rattles like rain when small hands go treasure hunting. A straw punctures a lid, pop, and the lid answers with a tiny bark every time the straw moves. Somewhere the tiniest person coughs the cough of a mouse trying out its voice. Someone shushes with a kiss of air that means I love you, not be quiet. There is the ceremonial shh of teens trying not to laugh and failing, and the kind laughter of adults who remember the exact pitch of that failure. Inside the projection booth, if you listen hard, you can hear work. In the old days, reels whispered through guides, a fluttering ribbon sound with an undertone like a sewing machine that has learned restraint. A splice ticked once per revolution, a drummer's metronome buried deep in the mix. Now, the projectors are more like refrigerators, and computers had a thoughtful child. Fans whoosh, A hard drive chirps. Someone's soft shoes cross cement with a rhythm that says practice, practiced, practiced. Even digital has a heartbeat if you wait for it. If the night is cold, sound travels like a confident messenger. Dialogue snaps from the speakers as if it were made of glass. If it's humid, the air grows thick and sweet and softens the edges. Music swells feel like they have butter in them. Explosions become thunder with manners. Real weather participates too. A distant train lowers its long, patient note across the tree line, and the movie accommodates it without fuss, as if the composer always intended a locomotive to hum under this monologue. On certain nights, rain plays the roof like a snare drum with brushes. You get the delicious confusion of watching a character run through a cinematic downpour while real drops stipple your windshield. The two storms braiding into one, wipers keeping time like a conductor with a strict wrist. There is an etiquette to volume, the social physics of shared air. During dialogue, knobs turn down across a dozen dashboards as if choreographed. A tide that ebbs to make room for the quiet things, the small quiver in an actor's voice, the felt thump of a hand on a doorframe, a breath that means everything. When the car chase arrives, your neighbour's subwoofer remembers its legacy and thumps exactly once before someone taps the minus button in apology. Nobody minds the first thump, it's part of the pageantry. Horns serve as applause at the end. Not rude honks, but dabs of sound like seals clapping with the tips of their flippers. A few people still clap with hands too, and the smack of palm on palm rings true in the cool night. Proof that humans remain analog beneath all the speakers. Small domestic noises drift into the score and do not break it. The soft squeak of a seat when someone resettles. The papery sigh of a napkin being chosen. The crunch of a pretzel bitten with strategic care. A dog's collar tags chime as he circles and finally declares the blanket elegant enough to sleep on. A phone buzzes once, a moth against a window, and is smothered, guilty and forgiven. Late in the second feature, there will be the gentle percussion of snores, solos and duets, all in the key of contentment. Sometimes the best sound is what's missing. A film stops the music and lets a look carry the scene, and the field becomes alert to micro things. The tick of cooling engines, the tiny tap of dew forming and letting go, the far edge of town sounding itself as a soft electrical hum you only notice when everything else is respectful. You hear a nearby page turn, someone brought a paperback for the scary parts. You hear whisper questions that are safe to ask in the dark. What did he say? He said wait. Oh. The O lands like a leaf on a pond. The mix outside your door changes with how you arrange the car. Windows up and the score becomes a private bath, hot and steady, bubbles optional. Windows cracked and you let the neighbourhood in. Banjo crickets, popcorn weather, the reliable sneeze of the dad 3 cars over whose allergies sink to the third act every time. A liftgate open turns the sound into porch music, the kind you can hear from the street when someone's playing in the next town over. Some families bring a little portable radio and anchor it to a lawn chair with twine. Its tinny courage fills the immediate 6 feet beautifully, and nobody farther away is bothered. On certain classic nights, an old intermission jingle sneaks back between features, and the whole field smiles by sound alone. You can hear it, the shade of rhythm that belongs to cartoons who teach you to buy snacks, the brass that's equal parts circus and municipal band. A few voices hum along, one low voice finds the harmony by accident and keeps it. The applause after the second feature, hand claps, horn taps, a single lonely whistle, feels like a town meeting that went surprisingly well. And then there's the thing everyone came for, which isn't only story or light, but the way music shakes loose your guarded parts. A minor chord floats out across metal roofs and rain gutters, and sleeping garden beds and finds you. A motif returns, and you recognise it like a friend's knock. Percussion rises, and even the crickets seem to add a high, pleased scratch, as if they consider themselves session players. In the midst of it, the lot keeps talking in the hushed language, fabric shushing fabric, ice breathing in a cup, two people remembering the same theme at the same time and letting their knees touch without discussing it. Some sounds will be here when you come back next Friday and the one after that. The projector's low exhale, the badge-carrying ping of the halyard clip in a breeze, the truck bed creak when a kid climbs up for one last look at the stars, the sigh that comes from an entire field when a hero finally chooses wisely, the double tap of a horn that means good night in drive-in, the radio going quiet not all at once but in a wave, cars clicking off like porch lights down a long street, each little silence adding to the next until the only thing left is crickets, a train far away deciding the next town can wait, and the soft tap, tap, tap of dew finishing its sentences on your hood, while the theme song you didn't know you remembered keeps playing in your head, softer and softer, but still exactly in tune. It begins with the small nod you give the attendant at the gate, and continues in shapes you couldn't name if asked. A wave as someone scoots their bumper back to improve your view, a hand lifted from a steering wheel in quiet thanks, the way a neighbour's brake lights wink twice like a friendly tap on the shoulder. The lot makes itself a town one gesture at a time. You back into your spot and a stranger points to the perfect angle. You gesture a thumbs up, and without speaking you've joined a club that meets weekly and has no dues beyond manners. Across the aisle, a family you've never met builds a living room out of chairs and blankets, and you can tell who belongs to whom by the way elbows find shoulders and shoulders yield without complaint. In the next lane, an older couple arrives in a spotless boat of a car, the kind with chrome like polished memory. He sets the speak on the window as if crowning a king. She unfolds a lap blanket he swears he doesn't need. 2 cars down, a group of teenagers negotiates territory with a blanket the size of a small country. They pretend to be aloof and absolutely aren't, rescuing runaway napkins with surprising speed when the breeze misbehaves. A minivan door slides open, and the interior glows like a fort from folklore. Little feet bounce in socks. A neighbour you recognise from the grocery store walks past with a cardboard tray precariously stacked, and everyone leans out of the way like a lane of reeds parting for a boat. The unspoken rules show up quickly. Headlights off, or covered with a soft t-shirt if your modern car refuses to mind. Phones dimmed to the barest whisper so the night keeps its dignity. Laughter allowed, meanness not. When a latecomer accidentally lights the field with their high beams, the lot responds with patience rather than booing. A dozen small hands do the universal lights gesture, each one a help rather than a scold. The driver fumbles, finds the switch, and the darkness returns to its proper richness. There's a little wave, a collective exhale, a reset. Nobody holds it against them. We have all been new here. Sometimes a small emergency arrives and is solved in the time it takes a trailer to roll. A battery gives up, old and honest, and jumper cables rise from trunks like red and black vines ready to be useful. A cluster forms around the hood, bright, with phone flashlights pointed respectfully downward. Advice is offered in appropriate portions, enough to help, not enough to crowd. The engine coughs, catches, and the circle breaks into soft applause you feel in your own chest. The gratitude is real and quick, paid in handshakes, extra napkins, and an open invitation to take a handful from the family's ridiculous bag of candy. The candy bag is accepted, of course, because this is how economies work here. Generosity in, sugar out. You begin to recognise the recurring characters. The quiet couple who always brings lawn chairs with cup holders and sits side by side like bookends. The car club with their immaculate classics occupying the back row, hoods down by showtime, but earlier gleaming like coins you can hear. the volunteer in the neon vest who has perfected the single hand wave that means just a little more there, perfect. The concession stand poet who decorates the chalkboard menu with doodles and seasonal jokes. The sign language family who sets up early near the pole that catches the best light off the screen, their fingertips flickering with conversation so graceful you can almost hear it. Local history floats around too, traded like baseball cards while people wait for the countdown. This used to be a 2-screener, someone says. My parents got engaged during Jaws. I worked the snack bar in '98. Could layer butter with my eyes closed. We saw Jurassic Park in a thunderstorm. The T-Rex roared and the sky agreed. These are the kind of stories a place collects like marbles in a jar. Bright and individual. More beautiful altogether. The concession line is where strangers turn into neighbours. A man in a work shirt with his name stitched above the pocket lets a trio of kids with exact change go ahead, because the soda refills are urgent in a way you remember with fondness. A teen looks panicked at the pump cheese situation, and a woman in a denim jacket demonstrates the tilt and release motion that prevents air pockets from causing heartbreak. 2 people from different corners of the lot realise they both grab the last packet of relish and find a way to share it like diplomats dividing a river. The tip jar collects small bills and big gratitude. Recipes are traded, not for popcorn, which is alchemy, but for the glitter sugar the volunteer swears makes the funnel cake taste like county fair in a single bite. Meanwhile, in the lanes, light etiquette becomes its own choreography. Flashlights point down like polite meteor showers. Tailgates rise and become porches. Hatchbacks open and become verandas. And the bicycles, always a few, woven through the parked rows like silver fish in a shallow sea. Bells dinging soft warnings that translate as friend coming through. When a lawn chair collapses, the laughter is kind and the fix is collective. Zip ties migrate as if by instinct, and there is always one person in the lot who carries a Leatherman like a badge of office. You start to notice the way people look after one another without needing names. The mother who returns from the bathrooms with a line report so the women in the row can time their trips. The guy who roams the aisle as a self-appointed headlight whisperer, draping a towel over a stubborn sensor here, sharing a trick there. The kid who fetches a stray frisbee and returns it without showing off their catch. The group who clears a pathway when an elderly couple arrives a few minutes into the feature, helping them nestle into the front row handicap spot with good sightlines and easy exits. When birthdays happen, they happen to all of us. A donut box opens, a cheap candle is lit and shielded from the breeze by cupped hands. The quietest, warmest version of Happy Birthday rises in a patchwork of tunings, and even the crickets seem to pitch in. On certain nights, a proposal appears, subtle, never flashy. A note flashes on the screen in that homemade pre-show slideshow they run for local events and yard sales. Maya, will you marry me? A pause that feels like a held breath across 6 acres. A small sound, half laugh, half sob, from the hatchback under the white string lights. Cheering horn taps, dozen congratulations shouted without knowing where to aim them. A stranger offers a funnel cake. Someone else offers a napkin because joy is sticky. Culture stacks up like the layers of butter in a bag. Languages drift past. A pair of friends narrating in Spanish. A family arguing in Polish over the merits of extra jalapenos. A dad translating a joke into ASL so his daughter catches the timing exactly. You notice which bits of humour survive translation, and it turns out physical comedy is the world's Esperanto. When the movie lays down a quiet scene, every tongue makes room for it. Shared silence is its own fluent language. You don't need a common vocabulary to gasp together. Sometimes weather presses its hand to the night and the town adjusts. Wind picks up. Blankets get shared with people who didn't believe the forecast. The Good Samaritans have extra hoodies in a tote for exactly this reason. When a light sprinkle tests the lot, out come the towels, the tarp angled over the open hatch. the collective lean-in under a quilt that becomes a roof. Radios turn up 2 clicks and people lean closer to catch dialogue between drops. If the sprinkle graduates, some cars leave, but many stay for the novel pleasure of rain scoring the movie. You hear the chuckle of those who know that staying is the point, not comfort but community, and the warm knowledge that tomorrow a stranger will nod at you in a hardware store because you were 2 cars over in the Friday storm. Part of the same ridiculous noble decision. There are rituals that happen every week and still feel surprising. When a trailer boasts only in theatres, the driving crowd cheers with a special kind of ownership. When the hero returns in the 3rd act with a scar and a plan, the lane of trucks with kids in pyjamas becomes rowdy in a way that is somehow still gentle. When the screen warns "dim your lights," the raccoon mascot with the broom gets an ovation. A vintage anti-litter PSA appears. Some 1960s cartoon apple tossing its core into a bin, and the lot adopts it as scripture. You see people slide from their chairs to pick up after a stranger. Not because anyone's watching, but because children are. Because you were. The lot carries sorrow too, carefully, collectively. A memorial sometimes appears before the show, a trusted volunteer's name in white letters over black. Dates like parentheses around a life, a simple thank you. The horn taps are softer then, respectful. A thermos is raised, a light is flicked on and off once in salute. The little rituals that say we remember, we go on. Later, when the credits roll, someone in that person's old favourite spot lingers a while and nobody rushes them. Strangest of all is how quickly this many lives weave without tangling. You learn the couple 2 rows up is expecting in October because their friends visit with a gift bag of tiny socks. You learn the guy in the old band t-shirt has a new job Monday because his sister teases him about bedtime. You learn the girl with the Polaroid camera is building a wall of drive-in faces, adding tape corners to snapshots and handing out doubles with a shrug, as if giving away a square of time is no big deal. She hands you one, and the picture is off-centre and perfect. Proof that you were a citizen of this town for a night, your car a row house, your blanket a front stoop. Barter flourishes. A spare battery for a radio earns a slice of pizza from the family who brought too much. A bungee cord saves a tailgate from intermittent droop and is repaid in Twizzlers. Someone lends a portable FM radio to the couple with the new electric car they're afraid to leave in accessory mode. The radio comes back with a thank you note written in the shape of a smiley face and 2 stick-figure cars. The note gets magneted to a fridge in a house you have never seen. The smiley face becomes yet another password into the next Friday's conversation. Hey, Smiley, got your radio? Security floats around too, but not the brittle kind. A volunteer in a windbreaker walks the rows with a flashlight that points to gravel, not faces. They stop to untangle a child's kite from a pole, to redirect a well-meaning drone operator to a better idea, to check the ambient volume with a glance and a grin. People ask where the nearest ATM is, and they know. Where the nearest bathroom is, and they point. Whether the thunder's going to keep going, and they say probably not. And if it does, we'll see it through. They are part mayor, part usher, part friend you haven't met before. You begin to notice how many tiny rescues occur over the course of a single intermission. A dropped pacifier is caught before it kisses the dust. A runaway frisbee is returned with a flourish and a bow. A dog's collar escape is foiled by a stranger kneeling and offering beef jerky like a bribe and a blessing. A bee investigating a soda can is encouraged elsewhere with a cup and card trick that, if you think about it, is very impressive given the pressure. Applause follows naturally, the small civic kind that says good play. When the second feature starts, the lot thins a little. Families tuck in or tap out, good nights are whispered. But the core remains, a quieter town, porch lights dimmed. You see the outlines of people who were strangers 2 hours ago, and now feel like the kind of neighbours who would take in your mail and water your plants. A woman you traded salt shakers with earlier passes by and leaves a wrapped cookie on your cooler, without breaking your eye contact with the screen. The written on napkin reads, "For the scary part," and you smile into the dark. Somewhere near the back, a small telescope appears out of a trunk and points over the top of the screen. A soft rumour spreads, "Meteor shower tonight." An informal line forms. No rope, no sign, just a mobile civics class where everyone is patient, and the telescope's owner explains which faint smudge is which. People take turns, leaning into the eyepiece with their "wow," kept on low so as not to disturb the quiet scene on screen. When the meteor finally streaks, the line makes a noise that's half gasp, half laugh. A sound you will recognise again when fireworks do the same trick, when someone's kid takes their first steps, when you hear your own name called in a crowd and realise you weren't expecting it. Phones light briefly and carefully, screens turn down, faces blue for a second, and you catch glimpses of text threads between cars. "Row C? Need bug spray? Anyone got spare napkins? Who's got jumper cables for a Subaru?" The answers come back as if the lot were a group chat set to kindness. "At the red truck. We do, 2 rows back. On our way." For flashlights bob, not as warnings but as beacons. Somewhere, a person who has spent a whole week being asked to give, deliver, fix, decide sits in the hush and watches help travel without being summoned by anything louder than politeness. Near the end, the movie asks for attention and gets it. Even the snack bar door modifies its hinge squeak to a whisper. Conversations shrink to the size of a breath. Someone across the lane reaches for someone else's hand and finds it like a familiar doorknob in the dark. When the credits arrive, the horns tap, a code you learned by watching, simple and sincere. Some clap, some just sit and let the list of names scroll, thinking of all the invisible people it takes to make light feel like feeling. In the projection booth, a silhouette takes a sip from a mug and balances the next sequence with the tenderness of a baker turning out a cake. And even as people begin the slow ballet of packing, the town doesn't disband so much as change shape. A stranger holds your chair steady while you collapse it. A kid, cross-eyed with sleep, is gently handed along, parent to aunt to cousin to car seat, to keep the blanket from falling. Someone offers to take your trash because they're heading that way, and your thank you is returned with a quick "next time" that feels like a promise more than a plan. Radios click off in a wave, brake lights glow like embers, the aisle opens and cars flow in courteous rivulets, each pause punctuated by a palm lifted in gratitude to someone you didn't meet, but somehow know. The night has stitched a loose quilt of us, and it holds, even as the stitches loosen, a fabric that will be waiting with the same old speaker poles and neon S, and the quiet certainty that next Friday the town will build itself again from nothing more than signals and snacks and 100 small decisions to be gentle with one another while the giant stories play. First the lights dimmed in tiny ways. A few bulbs along the snack bar died, and no one climbed the ladder that week. The neon S in snacks began to flutter on a damp Tuesday, and stayed uncertain through Saturday. The paint on the speaker poles faded from silver to the colour of old nickels. None of this was dramatic, it was how most endings begin, by forgetting to fix small things. Then the big world rearranged itself. Moles grew like mushrooms after rain. Living rooms took on ambitions, televisions swelling into furniture that asked for fealty. Movies learned to fit inside pockets. The soft edge of town sharpened into subdivisions and storage units, and land under the drive-in learned a new word, potential, spoken by people who arrived with clipboards and smiled a lot. Fogged windows became suspicious. Kids were told to be indoors. Big screens lost their monopoly on wonder. Some places closed on purpose and with ceremony. "Closed for winter" went up in red plastic letters, and winter lasted longer than anyone could politely admit. A month passed. A year. D's fell. O's rolled. CLS. E. D. F. RW. ITER, the Marquis stuttered, and the wind spelled the rest. Other places slipped away quietly, weeds lifting the gravel like a slow exhale, projection booths gathering dust in soft layers that remembered fingers, a cash drawer left open to air out after a sticky night and never closed again. Birds took the rafters and argued. A feral cat claimed the ticket booth and sat like a royal in a window of spider silk. The screen, once a bright idea you could see from the highway, turned into a blunt, pale cliff. In daylight it was suddenly vulnerable, seams showing, plywood repairs, a scar where a storm had asked impertinent questions. In the lanes the poles leaned like tired men. The old cast-iron speakers, where they hadn't been harvested by nostalgia or theft, hung like strange fruit on their cords. You could run a finger across the pole and come away with a grey that had once been music. And yet even in the quiet the places kept a certain posture. They faced forward. They waited the way a dock waits for boats that might not come back. On certain evenings when the wind blew from the west, you could almost smell popcorn that wasn't there. Ghost butter, phantom salt, like the building itself was dreaming of a full Friday. The snack bar's change tray still bore the oval wear of 1,000 coins. The mop bucket sulked in a corner with dried suds like frost. Somebody long ago and in a hurry had written "back in 5" on a paper sign and never returned to revise the number. People drove by and looked without meaning to. An old man idled at the edge of the lot and pointed through the windshield. "That's where your grandma threw her soda at the end of The Exorcist," and the grandchildren laughed and believed some different version of what a soda can could do. A woman in her 30s parked and walked the rows alone, hands in pockets, counting speaker poles like rosary beads, a private inventory. One for first date, one for first kiss, one for watching the sky while pretending not to cry. A pair of teens hopped the chain and rode skateboards in slow arcs under the silent screen and learned that pavement remembers a kind of applause. For others, love took the shape of labour. A volunteer brought a broom and swept leaves from a doorway no one had opened in months. Someone else scraped a ticket window clean with a razor blade, freeing it from a season of brittle flyers. Rummage sale, blood drive, missing cat, found. A retired electrician traced a short with a cracked multimeter, while a grandson held the flashlight dutifully at the wrong angle. The granddaughter brought a thermos and stood on a chair to test bulbs, and every time one lit, she made the noise people make for birthday candles. When the studios switched the world from reels to files, more than one drive-in blinked and staggered. The old projectors, beautiful, humming iron, understood film the way a veteran understands old roads. The new machine spoke a colder language and worst of all cost money that didn't live in the cash drawer. In town halls and VFW basements, coffee steamed and folks counted the ways to buy a future. Car washes with poster board signs, jars on diner counters next to toothpicks and red pepper flakes. A Saturday bake sale where a cherry pie fetched a sum you would swear had to be a typo. Someone set up a folding table with a raffle, half a hog, a gift certificate for tyres, a quilt whose squares were sewn from t-shirts of movies past. Jaws, Grease, Jurassic Park, a faded Batman logo with a mustard stain that felt like a signature. Little rescues accumulated. A hardware store donated paint the colour of optimism. The school band turned up in jackets and warmed the lot with Louie Louie, until the tubers got the giggles. On a muddy Sunday, a car club, chrome ringing like church bells, parked in a shining row and shook hands with the owner, and bought hot dogs like it was a pleasure to stand in line. A teenager learned to stencil letters straight and smart. Ticket, restrooms, please, dim lights. A woman with a real gift for lists rewired the concession workflow so that nacho cheese no longer required a pilgrimage, and people swore you could taste the efficiency. On revival nights, light returned carefully, as if it needed to remember how. The neon S steadied its throat and held. The snack bar's menu board, now half chalk, half LED, glowed without flicker. The new digital projector started with a whisper that felt risky, and then took its breath and pushed a beam so clear through the booth's glass you could see dust points orbit like tiny planets in the light. The first time the trailers rolled again. Some folks clapped too early and no one minded. Not every place came back, and the ones that didn't were folded into the lives of those that did. A box of speaker brackets from a closed drive-in 60 miles away arrived in a dented pickup like a gift of ribs to a hungry friend. A refrigerator with a good seal and a bad shelf found a second life chilling sodas under a counter where no one could see its cosmetic sins. A box of 35mm leaders, those stuttering countdown numbers, became decoration in the snack bar window. Kids pressed their noses to the glass and peered through the frames like binoculars to a past they'd only been told about. Even before the lot filled again, the place did work for the town. The screen became a bulletin board and a backdrop. Saturday mornings, the field turned into a flea market of card tables and blankets, wrenches, jarred pickles, VHS tapes of movies you couldn't stream if you tried. Sunday evenings, the church that lost its roof borrowed the sky and preached between mosquitoes. In June, 100 caps and gowns idled in the aisles and received diplomas by window. Names boomed from a portable PA, and a symphony of horns did the rest. In October, a line of minivans inched forward while witches and pirates leaned from trunks to hand out candy in a loop that felt like a carnival reinventing itself. There were stubborn owners and stubborn audiences. A projectionist slept in the tiny office during the heat wave because the new system hated thunderstorms and he trusted his hands more than surge protectors. A woman who had run the concession since the Reagan years could lay down butter in a bag like lamination. She taught 3 high schoolers and made them do it again until every mouthful tasted like the first scoop. The man at the gate kept a jar of dog biscuits and learned the names of the dogs before the people, then learned the people too, because he listened at the right points in the small talk. Some nights only a dozen cars rolled in, and the place kept its promises anyway. The cartoons danced, the clock counted down, the film, File Now, Spirit Same played. Love did not pretend the numbers were easy. Insurance premiums grew like arguments. Licensing fees arrived in envelopes with severe return addresses. Gravel cost more than anyone remembered. People came when they could and skipped when they couldn't. "We'll be here," the Marquis said, and to mean it required a ledger that drank coffee and stayed up late. A hand-lettered sign announced cash welcome, and even that Valentine stacked neatly into Tuesday's bank bag. There were setbacks that felt personal. A storm took a corner of the screen and the tarp repair billowed like a bandage. A raccoon vandalized the candy cabinet with surgical precision, and the photos, posted on the bulletin board with the seriousness of a police report, were so cute it was hard to stay mad. A neighbouring development put up lights bright enough to teach plants about noon, and the drive-in countered with taller fences, black fabric, and the insistence of a stubborn place that would not cede the dark without a conversation. And then there were nights that argued back at every decline. Fireflies rose from the grass and wrote cursive over the hoods. A kid in pyjamas fell asleep with a fistful of Twizzlers and woke up at the exact moment the hero returned in the rain, and even half asleep they understood the important part. A couple celebrated 20 years with a cheap cupcake and a candle that argued with the breeze and finally, gloriously held. A new family, tentative, tried the place and afterwards sat in their quiet car and said, almost in unison, "We should come every week," like they'd invented the idea. You could measure the devotion in things people brought from home. Battery-powered fairy lights along hatchbacks. Old quilts patched so many times they were practically essays. Lawn chairs repaired with webbing in a colour that didn't match and didn't need to. Radios with duct tape antennae that found the frequency anyway. Thermoses that clicked open with a sound that meant cocoa and patience. A blue plastic bowl for the dog that lived under the passenger seat, produced with magician timing when needed. Hammers and mallets for tent stakes because the forecast said breeze, which here meant this blanket will sail if you let it. Some of the drive-ins moved a little, not from their plots but in their customs. Craft nights in the off-season, Saturday morning cartoon marathons where people showed up in bathrobes and slippers, silent film evenings with a local piano player who learnt the breaks by ear and flattened people with a cord during a chase. A small farmer's market in the shoulder months, turnips piled like cannonballs beside jars of honey the vendor swore would cure your allergies and maybe your pessimism. Trivia nights where the answer sheets were napkins and prizes, were theatre t-shirts already soft enough to sleep in. Through it all, a certain vocabulary held. Dim your lights, please be kind. Feature starts at dusk, which is always a suggestion and never a promise because time is a gentleman here and shows up when the sky says so. New people learned the dialect by osmosis. Old people corrected themselves from habit, film, then movie, then shrugging, and letting both be true. The staff learnt the faces that meant first time and slipped a few extra napkins under the lid, just in case these folks needed help believing they belonged. The most stubborn love was often quiet. A man brought his father every Friday, and when the old man forgot the plots and then the titles and then the names, he still laughed at the cartoons. A widow kept coming, a folding chair in her usual spot, a blanket across her knees in July, thermos poured into 2 tiny cups out of reflex. 1 cup stayed full and she didn't make a fuss about it. A woman who had never missed a summer took the gate job when the knees gave out. She still wore her old seatback button with the theatre logo and the year the town saved the projector. "Hey there," she said to each car, as if greeting was the actual business of the place and movies were the excuse. There were winters when the screen wore snow like a shawl and the lanes iced into delicate maps. Volunteers used the brake to rehang a door that had always stuck and label the circuit breakers properly at last. Somebody climbed the marquee with mittens on and swapped broken letters with good ones, making next summer's titles with their breath turning white in the air. In March, when the wind still bit but the sun had hope in it, a pickup showed up with a pallet of popcorn salt and the driver leaned from the cab window to deliver the season's first sentence. "Thought you might need this." And in late spring, when the peepers sang and the lot's grass got its first bold haircut, and the new bulbs inside the S decided they were, in fact, built for duty, cars began to arrive again. One by one, then in 2s and 3s, old regulars slipping into their lanes like they'd been saving your seat. New folks hesitating at the entrance until a volunteer waved them to a spot and the place widened to make room. The beam reached out from the projection window to test the distance, and a few motes began their patient dance in the light. The same old dust that's always been there, doing its small, unremarkable job of making the invisible visible. It started with tape on the ground, careful blue lines, chalk circles, a neat geometry of space where bodies had previously trusted instinct. The gate attendant leaned out with a long stick holding a paper ticket like a fishing rod, and people laughed, grateful for the ridiculousness of it. The frequency was hand-lettered on the board with an extra flourish beneath it, as if the paintbrush itself were reassuring you. Tune here, everything else can be far away tonight. Cars parked with generous borders, tailgates became porches at measured distances, islands in a friendly archipelago. The snack bar worked like a puzzle solved in reverse. Order at the window, wait at the dots, pick up when your number flickers. Some nights they added a second menu on the side, a chalkboard that read more like a love letter than a list. "We missed you," underlined in powdered sugar. A masked teenager in a visor passed over paper boats with tongs like a conductor leading a careful orchestra. Butter was still butter, salt still a minor miracle, and the air promised the old comforts hadn't forgotten their lines. Applause learned new shapes. Horn taps replaced claps, soft and sweet as punctuation. A driver flashed hazards twice to applaud a guitar solo on the makeshift stage that had materialized where the playground used to be. The band played to windshields, and the lead singer's hair lit up in the projector beam when he wandered too far right. Between songs, he cupped his hands into a heart and the field answered, in little bursts of light, phone screens lifting, flashes winking like patient meteors. Graduation arrived in a parade of families who had written the year on their windows in soap and hope. Caps bobbed through sunroofs. Speeches came from a stage built of pallets and plywood. Names rolled across the screen in such big letters that each teenager turned monumental for a breath. Every vowel large enough to drive by. Diplomas were handed through windows, and cameras clicked like summer insects. When the last row crossed, 100 horns sent up a warm weather system of sound, and the owners, who had once wondered whether they'd ever turn the lights back on, stood in the booth doorway, hands in pockets, eyes doing the thing eyes do when a town remembers it can be a town without sharing a single chair. Sundays brought hymnals the colour of robin's eggs and portable keyboards plugged into a power strip labelled God. The lot had never minded extra meanings, and it managed this one with its usual evenness. Amens became horn taps and a few soft whoops. The sermon drifted through static and crickets. Even the insects seemed to pause at the parts shaped like questions. The altar call was a rectangle of light on the screen with a phone number large enough to read from the back row. A few cars stayed, a few drove off slowly, letting the benediction chase them all the way to the road. Not every revival act involved words. One night the screen showed a telescope's live feed of the moon, craters crisped enough to touch, a chalk bowl pouring shadow inward, and the lot held its breath, old and new placed in the same bowl. You could hear the soft gasp ripple when a satellite marched mutely across the face like an ant performing an ancient ritual. In August, a comet with a number for a name hauled its milky thread overhead. People lay on their hoods and pretended their spines were sundials. A video of an ocean rolled at the edge of autumn, waves taller than semis, each breaker a polite slap against your front bumper, and the sound of it coming through FM felt like a message meant specifically for ribs and old guilt. Weddings learned the drive-in's alphabet. A couple stood between pole 3 and pole 4, the officiant in a suit that looked like it had made it through the century in a garment bag. The vows were broadcast on the frequency, and a child somewhere in the second lane asked loudly, "Are we in the movie?" The answer was yes. Confetti stayed in the bag because of birds. Bubbles did the job instead, and when they floated through the projector beam, they turned into little planets with their own weather. Someone honked the first kiss into legend, and 20 cars followed. A comedy night worked better than anyone expected. The first comic told jokes to dashboards and found a rhythm by listening to wiper blades squeak in the pauses. The second comic killed, and they knew they were killing because the hazard lights lit up in applause like a field of small, polite volcanoes. The drive-in discovered that laughter doesn't need a ceiling to be laughter. It just needs permission and at least one brave person to start. Food trucks pulled up in a convoy on Thursdays, painted like carnival rides. Tacos in paper umbrellas, waffles with fried chicken in boats, coffee strong enough to dust the lenses of your glasses. People practiced the new dance. Walk, stop, wave, wait, and the lot held their patterns within its larger pattern. The old concessions still did brisk trade with the faithful. Meanwhile, a kid toddled by holding a pickle like a baton, green and glossy and proud. Other kids mouthed the word pickle as if it were a password. A retiree ran a stand by the entrance with local corn stacked in a Ford tailgate. The hand-lettered sign said "Honour Box," and the box didn't complain. The projection booth became a broadcast studio too. The operator learned to do the news voice for safety announcements. Please remember to dim your lights, check your radios, and keep the aisles clear for emergency vehicles. They did not say what emergencies would look like, only that the aisles should make room for them, which turned out to be enough. They slid local slides into the pre-show, a farmer's market schedule, a lost dog, a teenager's thank you for scholarship donations, a photo of the old owner with the headline 90 this week, and the field responded with a tremolo of horns that resembled birds. Some nights were double features of purpose, a blood drive roped off the back row. People parked, donated, drank juice in their cars, and stayed for a movie that had nothing to do with blood, but everything to do with living. A voter registration table appeared under the screen with clipboards stuttering in the wind. A volunteer in a jacket with too many pockets ferried pens soaked in disinfectant like tiny submarines. A charity auction slid quietly between trailers, and someone somewhere paid actual money for the right to push the butter button for an hour. Their friends waved napkins like flags all the way to row D. The mechanics evolved without losing their charm. The owners installed a better transmitter with a range that reached the road and half the cornfield beyond. A laminated sign in every lane explained how to keep your battery happy while your radio stayed awake, and a kid with a spool of orange extension cord learned to scamper with the grace of a cat. The new projector made certain scenes almost too real, and the old intermission cartoon held its own without trying. The hot dog's clean arc into the bun, a small act of artistic perfection that calmed the heart. People returned with their rituals sharpened and their gentleness louder. The teenager who always brings a step stool still did, and let strangers use it to see the moon. The couple who never finishes their popcorn still didn't, and still left the last handful sealed for the raccoons who had developed a union and a flair for the midnight meetings. A car drove in with a banner that said "First Time" like a new baby's blanket, and the row treated them like distant cousins who had finally made it home. Advice travelled not as rules but as tips you'd be happy to hear. Turn the key to accessories. Good sightline by that maple. Sour Patch first, chocolate later. The season stretched. October carved a face into the screen with horror marathons and a costume parade performed by people who refused to recognise the concept of age limits. November tried a food and film mashup where the owner smoked turkeys all day, and the parking lot smelled like a Norman Rockwell painting had learned about paprika. December, in regions where the cold wanted its say, hung lights on the speaker poles and found a way to run heaters in the snack bar line so that gloves could come off for hot chocolate and a movie where snow always arrived on time and nobody slipped. And then, beyond the year of careful distances, the habit stuck. Not the caution exactly, but the attention. People noticed each other with more patience. A new family parked too close and was waved into a better nest with the benevolent choreography learned during stubborn months. A kid coughed and 3 strangers produced water like magicians. The art of the horn tap remained. Clapping came back too, because there is no law that says you can't have both. The lot learned to be generous with sound, to measure joy in the currency of restraint and seize the moments that could hold exuberance without spilling. Movies expanded and folded onto the screen like quilts from different trunks. Big ones that needed the sky, small ones that turned the car into a confessional, old ones with lines you could recite before the actor reached them. The drive-in's calendar tilted a little toward event, a word that stretched to contain trivia nights, local short film showcases, a documentary about a factory in the next town, and a surprise midnight screening of a cult classic that moved teenagers to dress as characters and convinced one elderly man to bring a VHS to hold in his lap like a relic. He didn't hand it to anyone, only kept it right there, where he could feel the weight of having kept something through 3 moves and a divorce, and a year when driveways were more country than road. At the edge of spring, a fog bank rolled in from the river and turned the screen into a lantern. Cars were silhouettes afloat in milk. The projectionist adjusted focus and the movie sharpened inside a halo, the world's biggest snow globe in April. You could hear the gasp when 2 figures kissed on screen, not because the kiss was surprising, but because the kiss was clear inside a blur. People leaned closer to their radios as if volume were a blanket. Afterward, the fog lifted with the tricky grace of a magician's scarf and the field revealed itself again, undisturbed, as if the trick had always been the point. The drive-in discovered that arrivals have a music all their own. The sound of tyres on gravel became the overture. The gate attendant perfected the thumbs up that means, "You're good there." The volunteer with a headlight towel started carrying 2 towels, one for helping and one to give away with a wink, for next time. You noticed that next time didn't sound like a marketing pitch. It sounded like a ritual. People texted friends at dusk. Here, yes, row, see-ish, snacks, becoming. The field populated one small household at a time, until rows looked like musical notation, rests and notes arranged into a song you recognized and couldn't name. In the booth, old posters coexisted with a new clipboard that tracked weather, licensing, and the number of times the concession pump had to be sweet-talked into belief. The owner kept a Polaroid taped to the glass. The night of the graduation, hazard lights blinking like a constellation you could only see from one field on one evening. Next to it, a kid's drawing of the snack bar with smoky popcorn machines and a raccoon with eyelashes, all of it spelled the way kids spell, faithfully if not legally. You could read the revival in small edits. Someone had finally labelled the fuse box with more than tribal knowledge. The letters on the marquee were stored in a drawer with separators now, not in a cardboard box with a note on top that said "Be brave." The staff had discovered QR codes and used them like helpful stickers, scattering them with modesty on napkin dispensers and window flyers, not because the old way had failed, but because the new way meant the line moved faster and someone got to bed on time. Then summer swung fully in and the movies got loud. A space opera sent ships the size of post offices into a sky that had room to spare. The bass thumped and babies didn't cry because even bass sounds like ocean if you're sleeping on a parent. A tiny indie laughed in quiet corners and made the field nod in recognition. Someone's window was just open enough to let their chuckle join the chorus. The big hero did the brave thing, and the hazard lights rose by reflex in row after row. It wasn't zeal, it was gratitude expressed in the only language a car knows. There were still repairs, sudden, scheduled. A storm peeled a corner of the screen and the long ladder came out. A cousin with roofing hands climbed while 2 others held the feet and tried not to look like they were praying. A squirrel found the popcorn salt and wrote an editorial with its feet across the counter. The popcorn kettle broke and the field switched to candy without complaint, and 2 hours later a borrowed kettle from the Harlem bowling alley arrived in the back of a pickup with gratitude clipped to the tailgate by a spring clamp. What the revival gave most steadily was a way to arrive and a way to wait. Even when nothing was on the screen yet, the lot taught people how to be together without touching the same things. Little ones learned patience in units of previews. Teenagers learned the joy of a conversation without a table between bodies. Parents learned they could exhale into a dark that wasn't lonely. Single people learned the pleasure of being unalone among stories and snacks, the relief of belonging without being asked to perform it. The nights folded into each other, like pages in a book you love, some dog-eared, some smudged with butter, a few cracked at funny lines. The neon S in snacks learned to keep its courage, steady instead of flickering. The white letters on the marquee held full words again, no missing vowels. Sometimes the sign read simply "open," not as a boast but as a fact with a heartbeat, and in the slow teeming quiet before the first scene, you could watch the projection beam reach out into the dark like a bridge being rebuilt in real time, dust becoming glitter as it crossed, and you felt in your bones that the oldest part, the arriving, the waiting, the letting light carry you a while, had been there all along, patient as a dock, generous as a porch, ready every Friday to show you how to be a small good part of something bright under an honest sky. The projector beam thins, the radios click off one by one like porch lights on a sleepy street, and the night hands us back our reflections in the windows. If you're still here with me, blanket tucked, cup nearly empty, a little butter on your fingertips, thank you for sharing this slow, glowing ride through Friday Night America. Before we go, tell me a story in the comments. What did your drive-in sound like? Was it crickets and distant trains? Or a subwoofer 2 cars over trying its best to be thunder? Did you ever hang one of those heavy speakers on your window? Or were you an FM whisperer turning the dial until the movie found you? Maybe you never had a drive-in at all, only a parent's myth, a faded photo, a neon sign glimpsed from a highway at dusk. I want to hear those too. Tonight's map isn't just cities and countries, it's pockets of memory, little constellations we make together. If this felt good, if the stars got a bit brighter for a few minutes, tap the like, subscribe for the next sleepy wander, and ring the bell so the lights dim at the right time next week. Share this with someone who still keeps napkins in the glove box just in case, or with the friend who swears popcorn tastes better outdoors. It does. We both know it does. And if you're watching from bed, let the credits roll long after the screen goes dark. Let the soundtrack fade into the ordinary hush of your room. Somewhere out there, a marquee still spells open with a missing vowel. A teenager is learning the sacred art of layered butter, and a little field is waiting for cars to draw their rectangles on the grass like soft, temporary houses. Drive safe. Dream easy. I'll meet you again beneath the big, honest sky, same lane, same frequency, when the world's ready for another gentle story. Until then, good night, travellers.